regarding this. What has been the WNBA team's most brutal move this season? What is the most brutal thing a team has ever done? It's insane what the Valkyries did to Julie Vanloo. It's completely insane. Commissioner Kathy Engelberg is witnessing her league's disintegration in real time as the WNBA physically falls apart at the seams. We're talking about a league that should be seeing record viewership and sold-out venues as a result of the Caitlin Clark effect. However, the WNBA is allowing ridiculous actions to occur rather than defending what they have created. These motions are really, fans are willing to boycott the entire organization, which is quite callous. In essence, Vanloo traveled abroad to represent Belgium in the Euro tournament, correct? And essentially won with Emma. Rather than rejoicing and spending time with her family and supporters, she attempted to hasten her return to the Valkyries. She immediately boarded the aircraft, skipped the festivities, and heard the news that the Valkyries had waved her off in mid-air before she had even touched down. Let's discuss the recent events with Julie Vanloo and the Golden State Valkyries, man. It's not just terrible business either. This is blatantly cruel under the pretense of roster management. Belgium just won the EuroBasket championship thanks to Julie Vanloo. We are discussing the most significant event in women's basketball in Europe, the kind of accomplishment that makes legends and defines careers. All right, so the European Basketball Championship, or EuroBasket, is a major event. The winner advances straight to the 2026 World Cup the following year. And several players, including Belgium's Julie Vanloo, took a break from playing in the W to compete in the European Championship, especially for the Golden State Valkyries. They have a contract that includes this. Quite typical. Belgium casually wins the entire competition, and Julie Vanloo travels to Europe. On the other hand, the Golden State Valkyries are enjoying a very successful run of games without Julie Vanloo. Vanloo wasn't merely a spectator. Her average of 9 earned her a spot on the all-tournament second team, 5 points each game with 3 assists and 4 rebounds. On the global stage, this woman was living her dream. However, Julie Vanloo gave up everything for her WNBA team rather than remaining in Belgium to rejoice with her teammates, taking in the parade and the celebrations that winners are entitled to. Group. She did not attend the championship festivities. The special moment with her national team was lost on her, as if they had waved to her on an airplane. In addition, there were numerous festivities for her squad, the Belgian national team. They celebrated their EuroBasket victory with a flurry of festivities. In any case, she won an international tournament with Belgium, which is more significant to them than any WNBA title. For her, winning a WNBA championship is more important. She prevailed. Furthermore, they prevailed in a historic return. With 3 minutes remaining, Spain had a 12-point lead. She skipped all of this. But why? Because she believed she needed to return to her squad, the Golden State Valkyries. She believed were awaiting her return. She believed she was returning to her WNBA family. She was worn out. She was overcome with emotion after winning a title. She was adamant about returning to her squad, though. She arrived in San Francisco 18 hours after taking one of the longest flights imaginable. Man, it's a tough, harsh business. There are some terrible people who work there. And I understand it's a company, you must fulfill your obligations. However, you couldn't even let her return to the facility, family. Before you released her, you couldn't even let her land in the bay. Oh, my family, have a heart, I mean. When you need the 5 heartbeats guy, where are they? Oh, my God. This woman was thrilled. She was eager to get back to her teammates and bring that winning spirit to the Valkyries. You can see the happiness in her post for a moment, the contentment of someone who was prepared to dominate the WNBA after having recently conquered Europe. Then, like a freight train, reality struck. Oh no, Vanloo was slashed, bro, as soon as she got off the plane, actually. Quit talking. Whenever something like this occurs, it really seems to sink in. At the end of the day, though, it's a commercial problem. You feel me? Like this is truly a company, and you must handle it as such, my friend. You truly can, where you need to let your emotions out, but that's why it's difficult to settle in anything. No, you won't ever find out. At the end of the day, it's like you got a job just like someone else got a job. Therefore, you literally and constantly need to keep on your best footing. This is the section that should make everyone feel nauseous, so please subscribe if you're enjoying it. Julie Vanloo was not notified by phone that she had been discharged. Management's call. She was not dragged aside for a polite discussion. Not even a text message reached her. Social media is how she learned about it. That isn't the response of someone who anticipated this. Vanloo posted on Instagram, literally just touched down in the Bay. I need some time to process all of this and put my feelings into words. I can't right now. That's the response of a person whose entire world suddenly changed when she was in an airport. She is most likely still high and wearing the clothes she flew in about the rush of winning a European title. Parade celebration. Julie couldn't be there because she was heading back to the States, so she shared the video of her on her account. She posted that she had reached the States back in Fog City with a heart around the arena, and she wrote, "I love you, Belgium. I wish I was there." She has been removed from the team, according to the subsequent post. "I just landed in the Bay. Literally, I need some time to think about everything and express how I feel." Can use some heartbreaking emoticons at the moment. What makes them do this then? Business is business. Cutting her isn't actually what I'm talking about. They are the ones who made the decision. They believe they can proceed without her group. However, why didn't you inform her before she had returned all the way to the United States? According to what I've read online from a few different people, the explanation is that she would have lost her work visa and been unable to return to the United States if the Valkyries had cut her while she was in Europe. However, when they cut her while she's in the United States, giving her a window of opportunity to keep her work visa and possibly get hired by another organization. Although that makes sense in theory, it's clear from these accounts that she wasn't informed of that prior to her arrival. You believe that since this catastrophe occurred under Commissioner Kathy Angelbert's supervision, this is the appropriate time to discuss her. When one of her players was being completely destroyed by her own team, the lady who is meant to be upholding the league's integrity and making sure that players are treated with basic human decency was nowhere to be seen. Since taking over as commissioner in 2019, Engelbert has witnessed the extraordinary expansion, largely due to Caitlin Clark. Just 2 years ago, the league's viewership would have been unimaginable. Games average 1 while Clark is playing. 81 million people watched. That figure falls to 847,000 when she doesn't, a terrible 53% decline that amounts to over 1 million fewer spectators every game. Here's the question then, how can a league that depends only on public opinion and fan interaction allow a tale like Julie Vanloo to occur? What makes you let one of your franchises to treat a player as if she were worthless trash? However, Julie Vanloo was done. She actually left Europa as soon as she won and boarded a plane to return to the Bay Area. She used her Instagram story to discuss her trip arrangements, and she had barely landed in the Bay when they wrote about getting waived. Therefore, I'm interested in learning how someone can physically travel back to America from Europe and be told that they will be waived upon arrival. I realize that this was inevitable given the players coming and going, but I believe that the approach we're doing is not very kind, and perhaps these players realize this based just on how the WNBA is, but the Valkyries' approach to the game is absolutely fascinating. The web app underscores EO/7 quintillion 521 quadrillion 900 trill 794 billion 51,762,318 equals 1. And the sender device equals PC28-11. Regarding this absurdity, the basketball community did not remain silent. Vanloo's Belgian national team teammate and 2019 WNBA Finals MVP Emma Meisman was furious with the Valkyries. She wrote, "No, it's absurd to make her miss a special occasion in Belgium." However, that was only a public remark. Behind the scenes, you can guarantee she was expressing her precise thoughts to anybody who would listen about a league that treats its players more like robots than like people. WNBA analyst Danny Barlavi also didn't mince words. In other words, as an organization, you cannot permit this to occur. Vanloo was cut after he returned to the country after missing Belgium's celebration of the EuroBasket championship to report to the Valks. She ought to have been at home. Her teammates should have been with her. So unsatisfactory. You haven't officially entered the country until you step off the plane. Until you get off that plane, you haven't officially entered the country as long as you pass immigration. Thus, if it's a visa issue, it would be like, oh, her visa's been revoked. Wherever she was coming from, I don't believe there was pre-clearance. In any case, she had to go through immigration. In actuality, she most likely lost the visa nonetheless. If they had to cut her before she departed, they did so before she entered the country in case she lost her visa. Therefore, it doesn't really matter. Here's what, though, makes the whole thing even more frustrating. Caitlin Clark is the WNBA's biggest attraction in sports history. By herself, this woman prevented the league from going extinct. Arenas that were just partially occupied 2 years ago are now being filled by her. The WNBA appointment is being made on TV by her. The league as a whole loses 55% of its viewership when Clark is hurt. That is a whole collapse, not simply a dip. It demonstrates that with a few supporting characters, the WNBA is essentially the Caitlin Clark show. Therefore, if you have a golden goose of that type, how can you defend allowing teams to treat other players like disposable goods when you have a player who truly makes the difference between your league's survival and failure? The Valkyries and their apologists will tell you that this was all about roster constraints, but how do you risk the PR nightmare of stories like Julie Vanloo coming out? The NBA permits 15 players per squad, but the WNBA only permits 12. They will claim that they were powerless and that difficult choices had to be taken. Here's the problem, though. They anticipated this circumstance. They were aware that Vanloo would be joining EuroBasket along with other European players. They were aware of the tournament schedule. They had months to come up with a polite way to deal with this. Rather, they adopted the coldest, most ruthless strategy imaginable. Julie Vanloo's celebration of her championship was allowed to be sacrificed. Assuming she was returning home to her crew, they allowed her to spend 18 hours in the air. Then they made a social media announcement that caught her off guard. Following Sunday's victory over the Storm, he was aware that the Valkyries would have to make room on the roster for Julie Vanloo, Janelle Salon, and Chalaya Zandalini. But they made the decision to go, turn around and give Julie Vanloo a wave. Nothing against Vanloo, of course, although she is a fantastic player and a fan favorite inside Valhalla. Caitlin Chin was receiving crucial minutes, and it was evident that the coaching staff was giving her an increasing amount of responsibility on this squad. Additionally, when considering the decisions the Valkyries must make, they are considering not only this season, but also the franchise's future. Caitlin Chin can provide a few things that Julie Vanloo might not, including how long she will play in the WNBA and how they can shape her. Fans' reactions have been harsh and quick. Social boycott calls for the Valkyries and the WNBA as a whole are exploding in the media. Commenters are clamoring that perhaps the league doesn't deserve fan support if this is how it handles its players. One fan wrote, "Julie Vanloo deserved better. TBH, any player that this has ever happened to deserves better." Being abruptly waived or traded is messed up. Others are pointing out that the WNBA has suffered for years because of this kind of treatment, as teams have been able to treat players as though they are fortunate simply to be in the league rather than fostering a culture of professionalism and respect. The moment for the league, it couldn't be worse. Negotiations for a new collective bargaining agreement are now underway after the WNBA Players Association opted out of their existing one in October 2024. Players are calling for greater respect, better pay, and better working conditions. Exhibit A will demonstrate why those adjustments are sorely required in the case of Julie Vanloo.